won't be free to buy individual plans from private health carriers. They will be forced onto government health care, just as in Cuba. This is the future in Obama's Cuba America. The nationalized health care plan is expensive, and of course, in order to pay for it, taxes, 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 taxes. Just read Obama's lips. It has been announced by Charlie Rangel's Ways and Means Committee just how they might pay for this giant monster Cuban-style health care. Joining us from the Heritage Institute is Ray Hederman, who has been following the course of this communist bill.
Thank you for having me on, Michael. It's always a pleasure to talk to your listeners. It's been an interesting week in Washington as House Ways and Means Chairman Charlie Rangel announced how we're going to pay for health care. It might be surprising to people right now with the unemployment going up so high. We're at 9.5%. The administration promised us we wouldn't break 8%, but we were way past that. So it's a little bit surprising that Congress would come forward for the proposal to actually heighten unemployment. Very quickly, what the chairman is doing is passing a massive tax increase on a lot of successful business owners. Over 1 million small business owners will be hit with a tax increase that will push their marginal tax rates to well over 50%. That means for every dollar they bring in, half of that is going to have to go to the federal government. That's the type of tax increases that normally you expect from European countries. And in fact, we'll be one of the highest taxed nations compared to any of the OECD, any of the rest of the industrialized nations. So some of the states, high-tax states like New York, California, New Jersey, they'll be among the highest tax regimes in the world. Quite simply, this bill is a job killer. Small businesses simply can't sustain this type of tax increase. And it's important to look at small businesses because in economic downturns, a lot of times it's small businesses that help increase employment, that help pull the nation out of a recession. About over half of all Fortune 500 companies were founded during a bear market or recession. So these are companies that are looking to expand, even as larger, more established countries are starting to contract. So when you raise taxes on these small businesses, what you're doing is you're ensuring that people aren't going to be able to find work, that the unemployment rate is going to keep going up, and that these small businesses are going to struggle to expand, to hire new workers. Even worse, potential small businesses are never going to be able to start up. But it's important to realize that about 60% of everybody who's going to pay this surtax is a small business. About 20% of these returns have half of their income over small business. So these are the real successful partnership small businesses that kind of help drive the American economy. I mean, you often hear that small businesses are responsible for about 70% of jobs, and these successful small businesses are the job creators. And unfortunately, if these people are hit by the chairman's new surtax and successful, they pay about 1/4 of all income tax. So you can see they're already paying a lot of the federal income tax revenue, and now they're going to have to pay even more. And when you're having to pay tax rates of 50, 55, 60, once you start figuring in state and local taxes, you have people who simply aren't going to expand their business. They're not going to be able to go out and start up a new company. They're not going to be able to hire new employees.
There's no way they can afford to.
Now, the other problem is that you hear about this massive new tax increase, and you got to realize that's only half the size of the bill. Chairman Rangel's tax increase raises about $540 billion. They need over $1 trillion. So that means as big as this tax increase is, and you hear that it's only going to be hitting the wealthy. So they're going to be looking at cutting Medicare, cutting Medicaid, trying to find other types of savings, could be looking at other future tax increases down the road, because quite simply, the Congressional Budget Office has already come forward and said this plan is not going to reduce health care costs. In fact, it's going to add to it. We already have a record $1 trillion deficit, the highest deficit on record, one of the highest percentage of the economy since about World War II. And the new health care plan that's come out of the House is going to add to this massive deficit. We're going to tax the successful, the top 1-2% of this nation at rates that we haven't seen before since President Reagan enacted his tax reforms. We're going to put ourselves at a competitive disadvantage to the rest of the world. And we're still going to have to do more because no matter how big this tax increase is, they're still not being able to pay for the whole thing. I think this is a big concern. It's why a lot of the small business community is very nervous about what's going on. They're taking a look at these tax increases. They're looking at these health care mandates. And they're having to look at how are we going to pay for the rest of this bill. And they're very worried about what the effect this is going to have in a poor economy as is. And this bill is just not going to make it worse. So thank you very much for having me, and have a good evening.
Well, thanks for following this for us, Ray. This is the Savage Nation. With God's will in your listenership, I shall return.
Savage, the home of Michael Savage and the Savage Nation. Talk 910 KNEW and 910KNEW.com.
Here's what's on michaelsavage.com. The big story, the shocker that you're not going to read in tomorrow's newspaper, is that Jackie Smith says I wasn't up to the job of being a Home Secretary. Who's Jackie Smith? She's the dolt who placed Michael Savage's name on a list with murderers and terrorists. Remember, I'm only a talk show host. You may disagree with most or all of my opinions, but I'm only a talk show host. I never bashed in a child's head with a rifle. I never killed immigrants and put it on the videotape. They did. She did that to me. Here's what she said. You're not going to believe it, but it's classic liberalism. And remember what I told you. Liberalism is a mental disorder. In this case, you can see it's an incompetent mental disorder. It is putting all of us at risk. Go to michaelsavage.com and read the story. Jackie Smith admitted she was not up to being Home Secretary, and she said she should have been given some training before she was handed the job. Now, Home Secretary is the equivalent of Department of Homeland Security here. Now, she's likely to be remembered for claiming expenses for her porn film watched by her husband. She said, when I became Home Secretary, I'd never run a major organization. I hope I did a good job. But if I did, it was more by luck than by any kind of development skills. She said, I think we should have been better trained. I think there should have been more induction. When asked by Total Politics magazine if she had worried she was not up to the job, here's what this liberal said. Every single time I was appointed to a ministerial job, I thought that. I didn't sleep for a week in 1999 when I got my ministerial job. You see, she was initially a school teacher, and then she was made a minister, just as in the Obama administration, training on the job, training wheels. The ex-teacher was one of the first MPs embarrassed by her expenses after she listed a room in her sister's house as her main home when her family lived in a detached house. And then there was the porn thing. And then there was the Michael Savage banning thing. Can you believe this? Well, they haven't apologized yet, and they still haven't taken my name off this list. I am still a man without, let us say, a British country. We're working on it. Go to michaelsavage.com, read the sad story, and see what liberalism is and the kind of damage it has wrought. And by the way, it's just beginning to play out here in America, where people just as incompetent, just as small-minded, just as evil, if you will, as this person are now running this country. Here's some of what we talked about today on the Savage Nation. Well, the homicide bombers, the Islamo-fascist homicide bombers, struck again, struck again, struck again. And the media is ignoring it. They set off bombs, killing 8 and injuring over 50 at hotels in Jakarta, Indonesia. But after a very breezy mention on the cable news channels, they went right back to shilling for Obama's Cuban medical plan. They cut to a press conference with Pelosi pushing it. They cut to a press conference with Obama pushing it. They cut to another conference with Nostroman pushing it. Wall-to-wall Soviet-era coverage. Nothing on the dangers we face from our real enemies. Just take the Obama health care pill and everything will be fine, they say. Did you know that Iran is tear-gassing protesters? Oh, that? Oh, them? Yes. People still protesting for their basic freedoms in Iran? I thought they gave that up after Michael Jackson died. I thought they stopped because it was so important to focus on Obama's health care program. I thought that Judge Sotomayor's moving Latina genius story had convinced the Ayatollahs to give up their desire to take over America. Well, that's what you think if you've been watching the news in the last few weeks. But no, Iranians are still fighting and dying for their freedom against the imams who selected the Hitler of Iran, Ahmadinejad, over the reformer. And today they launched tear gas at protesters during Friday prayers. Isn't that a wonderful thing? America's streets are paved with yolds. America's streets are paved with yolds, not with gold. Obama's secret dinner with leftist historians. He had a secret White House dinner last month. All the historians invited were known for their leftist outlook on history. You didn't read that in your local paper. So you see, why am I not doing politics? Because it's too painful. It's too painful. I've already paid a high price by being banned in Britain. You say, well, big deal. You're making a big thing of it. What did it actually do to you? Let me tell you something. It's been the most wearing thing in my life. Because once they put you on a list like this, you don't know what's going to come next from your own country. And I believe there's a conspiracy emanating from America's State Department, and they're trying to set me up first in order to do something to me next. And I believe that I'm the first, that I'm the canary in the mine.